was rich, but I was completely, entirely miserable. As opposed to now, yes, it is a difficult job. It is a difficult thing to do, but there's this fulfillment that comes from knowing that you're helping other people and all the gratitude that comes through. So it's like, I mean, it's not pretty, but it's real, and it's really fulfilling. So I think what is missing for a lot of people that are really rich is that sense of helping other people.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Entrepreneurs in Recovery podcast. If this is your first time, welcome. If this is your 41st time, because today we are on episode 41, thank you for returning once again. And why is that significant, episode 41? Well, I read a statistic that only 1% of podcasts make it past episode 21. So we've doubled that. And I want to thank you for that because of your listenership, if that's even a word, because of your liking and subscribing on YouTube, and also by leaving a review on Spotify and iTunes. That is helping the show grow. That is helping the show reach more guests, like today's guest, who found me as a result of another guest, Ben Malcolm, the spirit pharmacist. So thank you all so much for liking and subscribing. And once again, my message is go ahead and take great care of yourself. Get out there and do some nature walks, some nature bathing. That's my encouragement for you today. That's my assignment for you today. With that said, I would like to introduce today's guest, Sam Believ, who is the founder of the Ayahuasca podcast. He's also the founder of LaWayra, which is an Ayahuasca Retreat Center in Colombia. And you're going to hear all about this in the episode. But Sam is an amazing individual who's overcome his own addictions, his own trials. You're going to hear all about the synchronicities of how his retreat center even happened. You're going to hear about his entrepreneurial journey. You're going to hear about how ayahuasca can be a tool to overcome addiction. So enjoy the episode today. Thank you all so much. Hey, Sam, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jesse, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, it's a great honor to have you on today. You reached out to me after the spirit pharmacist, Ben Malcolm, was on the show. You heard the podcast episode, and you reached out and said, hey, I'd love to come on your show. And I love when that happens because I love when people listen to the show. And I love when they, come on because they heard a great guest. And I'm just so excited to have you here. This is my first episode. I'm recording from Costa Rica, and you're in Colombia. So I feel this is just a really special moment for the show, for the listeners. So thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Yeah, I interviewed Ben for my podcast as well a few months ago. So when I was following him on Instagram and I saw he did an episode with you, so I reached out. And yeah, it's always better this way. It's kind of like, because we kind of met the same person, we're no longer strangers. That's how it feels. And Ben is a great guest. Ben is so knowledgeable.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a great guest, and so are you. I mean, I want to bring you on the show because, as the listeners know, we haven't had anyone on the show to talk about ayahuasca. And, we're 33, 34 episodes in, and we've talked a lot about psychedelic assisted therapies. And you're someone who's very knowledgeable. There's going to be a lot of things today I think people are going to be surprised about, as I was, as I learned about your story and learned about Colombia's tradition with ayahuasca. So I'd love to start there. Let's let the audience know a little bit about your story and what you were doing previously, and then what called you to step into this space you're in today. I'd love to get to know you more, Sam.
Thank you, Jesse. So I'm glad that I'm the one talking on your podcast about ayahuasca, because that's kind of what I want to do. I want to be the person that speaks for ayahuasca, and even like my podcast is ayahuasca podcast, and I'm even planning to create this International Ayahuasca Day. I don't know how, but I'm all in on ayahuasca because it changed my life, and approximately 700 people every year that come through our doors. So what happened to me? I'm from Latvia. I'm 36 years old. I came to Colombia 8 years ago, and started working with the medicine about 4.5 years ago. I was depressed and I was directionless in life, and not only ayahuasca kind of magically took my depression away, but it showed me my direction in life, which just so happened to be is ayahuasca. previously, before that, I was zero spiritual, zero religious, coming from one of the least religious countries in the world, doing one of the least religious jobs. I was an engineer in offshore oil and gas, like working on platforms at sea. And now slowly I'm transforming. So I'm still pretty reasonable. I approach everything with healthy amount of skepticism, but I've since learned enough to become a spiritual person, and hopefully finding that reasonable way to explain it to other people that maybe would benefit as well from changing their life, and kind of realizing that we're not just sacks of meat, living and dying, that there's more to this life. And yeah, I mean, ayahuasca is a magical medicine. So I made it the purpose of my life, and both from receiving people at the retreat, helping them go through the healing, and also spreading the word, because I think that the world is in crisis right now. There's mental health crisis. There's all kinds of crises, and it seems like it's one of those things that can actually help. And I don't mean by that it's like just going to change your life automatically, but it is that door that opens that healing path. So I went on a rant.
No, I love that. And you can go on rants. That's fine. I think that's really amazing to think about. You were an engineer in offshore oil, and then you got called to start a retreat center in Colombia for ayahuasca. I think that's really, really interesting. And I think that goes to show, like, sometimes you just don't know where you're going to be called to, trusting that. What was it? Was there like an inner calling, an inner voice? I know there was some, I know you struggled with maybe some depression, and so what was it that really called you to start this endeavor?
I mean, it's funny because 8 or 9 years ago, not only I didn't know what ayahuasca was, I didn't even know probably where Colombia was on the map. It was just like, for me to imagine that I will be having that lifestyle would be like for me today saying, 10 years from now I'll be living on moon, and I don't know. So it's really crazy. But the way it happened was just synchronicity after synchronicity after synchronicity. So the way I like to describe it is, I did all the work together with my wife. Like, it's a really hard job, but all the decisions and every directions and every turn we took was synchronistic. From me coming to Colombia, from me meeting my wife, there's so many synchronicities in that. From then me coming with her to countryside, of which COVID played a significant role as well. And then just every friend, everyone around me, ayahuasca, ayahuasca, ayahuasca. And I was like, I don't do drugs. I'm not that kind of guy. What are you talking about? My first ever psychoactive thing I've ever tried was ayahuasca. So I tried smoking weed a few times, but it didn't really work for me. But so basically I just went in all in deep end. But synchronicities, that's the best way for me to describe it. It's just like chance events. Life just kind of seems to be pushing me in that direction. And I've since then, I guess that's part of my being spiritual, is I've since then learned to pay attention to when there seems to be a trend or a message or a direction arising. You kind of have to almost like surf those waves to understand like what it's trying to take you. And if you follow that path, and if you kind of find your path, then everything kind of goes your way. And when you don't, then you encounter a lot of resistance. So yeah, I would like to take all the credit for all the achievements, because there are many, but it's actually just, it all just happened. I just followed the guidance.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. That's really powerful. I think that's something that's highly underrated, right? Is following the synchronicities, following that calling. And sometimes it comes from great sources of pain, and sometimes it comes from great sources of inspiration. And it sounds like that's what happened to you. And it sounds like you had a great partner too to help you to guide that and navigate that path. I'm curious, we had a conversation prior about some of the topics we want to get into. And one of the ones that really was interesting to me was Colombia and the difference between Colombia ayahuasca and Peruvian ayahuasca. And we're going to get into what ayahuasca is and all these things. But I want for myself up front to know, like, when I think of ayahuasca, and this is from documentaries I've watched and people talking about it. You usually hear about Peru, the Amazon rainforest, Peru, and that's where ayahuasca originated, and this is where the majority of ayahuasca comes from. But that's not true, is it? So I would love to hear about Colombian ayahuasca, the history of it, and how it's even made its way to where I am now, as Costa Rica. And so I'm really interested in that. If you could tell us more about it.
I think that the reason I'm so passionate about it, and the reason why, I mean, our website still is ayahuasca in Colombia. Like, even though the retreat is called LaWayra, it's like, it almost feels like this big injustice that happened, because not only Colombia is as traditional as Peru when it comes to ayahuasca, but you can arguably say it's even more traditional because Richard Evans Schultes, the famous ethnobotanist that kind of put ayahuasca on the map in the recent past, he was actually coming to Colombia, not Peru, and the McKenna brothers, they traveled to Colombia as well. It's just that what happened was narcos happened. So when Pablo Escobar and his friends and then the other cartels were happening, they obviously, Colombia just got removed from the map of tourism, and together with that, psychedelic tourism. So, but yeah, not only ayahuasca is as traditional here as it is in Peru, but like Costa Rica, for example, they don't have ayahuasca tradition, and most of the ayahuasca served in Costa Rica comes actually from Colombia. Even some of the shamans, like I know shaman in Rhythmia, he's Colombian as well. He went to the same shaman school as my shaman. Like they know each other. They come from same tribe. So what I think is, my personal feeling is like I would really like to kind of like resolve that injustice and put Colombia on the map, and also take advantage and like try and rebrand Colombia from bad drugs to good drugs, from cocaine to ayahuasca, because cocaine hurts people, ayahuasca heals people. It's like, and Colombia is this beautiful place. And now as it got safer, it seems that it's kind of happening. And I'm not the only one doing that. There's other people I know, some other friends of mine, they're also running the retreats. And we're on that quest to resolve that injustice. But there is a positivity to that fact that it was overlooked. Peru got a little crazy with ayahuasca. Like you can go there, buy it in the market. There's a lot of sort of shady people that have no idea what they're doing, fake shamans. And I'm not saying all of it. I know there's a great retreat centers, great ayahuasca tradition. It's just that because of that tourism and because of all the money that came in, it kind of ruined Peru a little bit temporarily, I believe, because also ayahuasca takes about 3 to 8 years for it to mature. So if you have too much of an inflow of tourism, the older vines get cut out. And in Colombia, I guess there's a bit more of that, storage of the older vines as well. And also because of how it was not overrun by tourism, it's still very respected. You cannot easily find ayahuasca, for example, on the market. There's a pretty good regulation where you can only serve ayahuasca if you have a permit from an indigenous council. So I think that it was a good thing in a long run. But one other reason why it was overlooked is because in Colombia, ayahuasca is called jahe. What is the main difference between Peruvian ayahuasca and Colombian ayahuasca is that Peruvian ayahuasca is made with ayahuasca vine and then chacruna, DMT shrub, Banisteriopsis capi, and Psychotria vidris. And in Colombia, same ayahuasca vine, but the DMT shrub is different. Instead of chacruna, it's called chagropanga or chaliponga, or they call it chagro. So the source of DMT is different. But I've never tried Peruvian ayahuasca myself, but I spoke to many people that tried both. Some people say Peruvian ayahuasca is less strong but lasts longer. Other people say Peruvian ayahuasca is more strong but lasts less. So honestly, there is not much clarity on which one is what and how different they are. In my opinion, they're very similar. What I like to say is think about it as you have a Cabernet or Merlot. Both are red wines. Both will affect you, and only if you're like really, really an expert, you'd probably be able to tell the difference. Hopefully, I'm not offending medicine by comparing it with, but McDonald's to Burger King,
Yeah.
very similar.
Yeah, that's wow. I think that when I heard that, I was misinformed, uneducated about ayahuasca, where it came from, and it makes so much sense that it's like this. It's like the perception, right? The perception of when you hear about Mexico, people, even my mom included, will say, "Oh my God, cartels! It's unsafe. Don't go." And then you hear Colombia, and it's the same, narcos. Pablo Escobar, even though that was decades ago, it still has this perception, and it's
Hmm.
really interesting to think, as I've traveled to Mexico myself to do medicine trainings, and as I'm now in Costa Rica, which obviously is a safer place, even perceived safer it is. But at the same time, you think about Colombia. When I think of Colombia, I've been programmed. I've been programmed to believe a certain belief about Colombia. It's all cocaine. That's what it's there for. That's what people go there for, and that's super ignorant, of course. So to think that you would go to Colombia to do ayahuasca was never even in my thinking until I met you. So it's so interesting to educate our listeners about, like, Colombia is a real option to do. Not only is it a real option, a lot of the ayahuasca that even comes to Costa Rica comes from Colombia. So this is really fascinating, and really appreciate you sharing that with the guests.
Yeah, it's I remember when I was first going to Colombia, I was really afraid. I was like, what is going to happen? Because I've also been programmed. We all watch those movies and series, and I remember when I first met a Colombian person, I was like, Pablo Escobar and cocaine automatically, and he got offended, and I was like, well, sorry, I just don't know anything else. So now I'm on the other side of this misconception, and I'm trying to like educate the world that, I mean, Colombia right now, Colombian big cities are safer than a lot of big cities in US. Like Medellin, for example, the nearest city from us, it went from being number one city in the top 100 cities for like kill list, like amount of people dying by gunshots, to not even being on the list. While at the same time, there's I think 3 or 4 American cities that are on that list. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why this fear is created. Whether part of me almost believes that maybe there's some kind of agenda, because when you come to places like Colombia, and I'm gonna do something that I normally don't do, but here's the view outside of my window,
Oh
and
wow.
you see mountains, and it's green, and it's sunny, and it's like this all year round. Like literally, the only difference is that it might rain 1 hour a day, it might rain 2 hours a day, but then the weather is perfect. So I think when people come and experience that, they don't want to leave, and I think that maybe like people in Europe or US are just afraid that people might leave and never come back. And that's why the fear is like, don't go. But and it's also the same fear they use to tell you like, don't work with psychedelics, you go crazy. There's this side effects, and just keep muffling your pain down with antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication. Don't make any ripples on the water. Just be careful. It's so that's another way to look at it. Maybe there's some kind of fear-based way of controlling people. But same thing happened to me when I was drinking ayahuasca. I was like 50% sure that I'm gonna die, but I still did it. I was like, no, the calling was stronger than fear. And now after I've done it, I don't know, probably more than 100 times myself, and seeing like literally thousands of people come through our doors, and all of them being better afterwards. There is risk. You gotta do it properly. You got to have a shaman. You need to have a good set and setting. You need to prepare yourself. But it is much safer, I believe, than antidepressants for most people that are struggling.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So, you have people who are going to listen to this podcast episode, and they're going to, maybe they've never done ayahuasca, maybe they've done ayahuasca, and maybe they had what we'd call a challenging experience, or some would maybe even call it a bad trip is a way to look at it. But let's say they went through some challenges, because I'm going to share a little bit about my experience. So in 2022, I went out to Costa Rica and did ayahuasca, and my first cup of ayahuasca, sometimes you drink, we can talk about this, but 1, 2, 3, whatever cups. And my first cup of ayahuasca, what happened is I had a really intense experience where all of this, let's say 7 to 12-year-old challenging traumatic experiences that happened all came flooding into my being, and I actually became the 10-year-old, and I could feel all these really intense experiences. And and the people next to me, I went with people who I met in sobriety. I met with people I met in recovery. They were all around me, and they also drank the first cup. They didn't have that experience on the first cup, but that's what I had. And once I sat through that and really allowed myself to surrender, which I had to surrender to be able to see and kind of accept what had happened, I fell into a very powerful, blissful state where I would say ayahuasca, the medicine, sort of became almost like it started to talk to me to say, hey, everything's going to be okay. I wanted to show you this kind of experience. And so what is it about, people who come through that have, let's say, a challenging experience, or they are perceiving that it's going to be really challenging, or they believe they're going to die? What do you have to say? Because I want to add on top of that, I had someone recently email me and tell me about their ayahuasca experiences. They did many, 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 and they had a challenging experience. And now today they went back to another shaman, which helped them to sort of reset that experience. And now they're thriving. So I'm just kind of curious. Can you tell us about what can we address this challenge?
These are many questions in one, so hopefully I'm not gonna forget any of them. But number one, I mean, bad trips are real. You can get a bad experience, right? But it's more complex than just this one simple bad experience. So the way I like to break it apart is you have a difficult experience, you have a productive experience. If you have a difficult experience but it's productive, it's actually better than an easy experience that's not productive. So for example, in your case, you felt something came out, it was challenging, but then you feel better afterwards. That's actually better than if you just feel bliss and feel the same afterwards. On the contrary, if you are getting a bad experience, it's a difficult, challenging experience, and you're resisting it, and you're trying to fight the medicine, and it beats you to submission, and then maybe you don't get a resolution to that, then yeah, it's just a bad trip because you didn't get anything out of it. But that's because you resisted. So importance for us as facilitators is first 24 hours here at LaWayra, when people arrive, we just talk. There's no medicine. There's a lot of explanation on what to do, how to handle it, setting intentions, just really preparing your mind for what's to come. Because if you resist the medicine, that's what's going to happen. But if you have a challenging experience, but at the same time it's productive and it's full with content, and you're allowing it to unfold, and then you integrate it well, that's the best thing ever. Because we focus a lot on the process, and that's kind of upsetting a lot of people that come to work with the medicine. They want to see visions, or they want to feel a certain kind of bliss, but it's not about it. It's kind of like if you're coming to a surgeon to remove a tumor, and you're really focusing on how you're going to focus on that feeling of you being cut up and the tumor being removed. It's almost irrelevant, because what you want is something to be removed, right? So there's this focus on positivity of the experience, but in most cases, the best experiences that result in the most life-changing events is when the experiences are challenging but productive. And to make it, there can be a challenging experience and a non-productive one, but mostly, if you have a good setting, if it feels safe, if you feel safe, you can really let go, relax your ego to allow the process to unfold, then most of the experiences are positive. And regarding what you're saying with somebody that worked with the medicine, maybe was kind of left in the limbo, incomplete, and feeling worse than before, that also happens. And most of the times, they end up coming to another shaman to fix them, because maybe the person they were working with previously maybe they're not a real shaman. They don't really know what they're doing, or they have a process that they have not completed. It's kind of like, let's say you have this physically analogy, you have this festering wound, and you kind of cut it up, but it's still open and it still hurts. So it's like, not only you need to cut it up, but you got to clean it out and, address the wound. So incompleted processes. So I think that also it's really important that the shaman who you work with, their medicine is a real medicine. It doesn't have many admixtures, and they really know how to give you the right dose, because a lot of people in their pursuit for this big bang experience with full of visions, they take too much medicine and they can be in a spot where they cannot really navigate it too well. So it's, the wise shaman will not give you too much too soon. They will find a way for you to get you into that productive range where you have an experience that is powerful but not overwhelming, where you can still recall the lessons. So that's what's coming up for me.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think there's a lot of quick fixes in our society. We want to have that, if we're going to, go see a psychotherapist, we want our depression to go away overnight. We want to not have to do that deeper work. And I think, even with medicine experiences, I can speak to this firsthand myself, is you have an expectation of the medicine and what it's going to do for you, what the outcome is going to be. You're going to have this, you believe you're going to have this mystical experience, you're going to meet God, you're going to do all these things. But a lot of times the medicines are going to show you your shadow. It's going to show you these things that you repress, that you ignore. It's going to show you how you eat. It's going to show you the way you treat your kids. It's going to show you the way you treat others. And it's a really powerful experience that, with the right, like you said, set and setting, and then integration. And I think that's a big topic we talk about on the show when we bring guests on to talk about psychedelics, is the integration process. How do you integrate an experience on ayahuasca? Now, I've only done ayahuasca twice. I'm sorry, I've only done ayahuasca once, but it was a significant experience, and it's one that, in some ways, I'm still integrating. I still think about and process that. So, what would you say about the integration process? If someone comes to your center and sits with ayahuasca, what is that integration process like for them?
So first of all, on the shadow side of things, ayahuasca is known as a shadow medicine. That's exactly its area of expertise. And I've been recently getting really into shadow work, and honestly, in my own process, it gave me so much clarity. So now I'm actually giving lectures to people on shadow work when they come to the retreat, because it helps to create that structure for them to build to kind of like organize their experience around, because a lot of the healing revolves around shadow. As to integration, I mean, integration is crucial. Biggest issue for us as facilitators is that most of the integration happens after the retreat ends. So there's only that much we can do if people don't follow up. But in my understanding, integration is making something whole. So you have your life experience and you have your medicine experience, but they can be like totally different. Here's your medicine experience and here's your life experience. So how do you bring them to the same level? How do you take those lessons from the medicine and not just like let them be forgotten as a dream, but how do you remember them, recall them, transform them into actionable steps when you come back to your life, which a lot of times involves, changing your habits, removing something from your life that no longer benefits you, or adding something into your life. So really making like a list of things you need to do when you go back home, because the medicine, ayahuasca is not going to like magically fix you and take your problems away. Like, yeah, I told that ayahuasca helped me overcome the depression, but the way it did it, it would like lift the fog for a few weeks at a time and allow me to do stuff, take courses or learn. And then eventually it showed me like, take this path, and I did. And then because I resolved the issue that was causing my depression, then the depression kind of went away. So the way medicine works is like, it will give you homework and you got to do the homework. But if you just keep coming in, just keep drinking more medicine, eventually you'll just be like, why are you back so soon? And you haven't done the homework, and it's going to give you a bad trip, like a sort of tough love kind of mother feminine spirit style. So what we do, for example, is number one, we give people integration journals. So I don't have any on me, but they're like really pretty integration journals. So as you go through your process, there are like series of questions that allow you to recall as much as possible and put it on the paper. Because if you store it, then you keep it. Because a lot of times ayahuasca states, they're very, you have your conscious state, you have your dream state, and ayahuasca state is somewhere in the middle. So if you don't write stuff down, even though it's like a life-changing revelation, you might notice that like a year from now, you'll be like, yeah, it was kind of great, but I don't really remember what happened. So it's important to write it down. So, and also the habit of journaling is an amazing tool for people. Then what we do is sharing circles. So we do word circles where people share about their experience. In the beginning, they share about their intentions, and then as their experience progresses, and taking it out sort of from your short-term memory and processing that information and speaking about it also helps to recall more of it and kind of create like a scenario where it's almost like you're reading a book and every ceremony is like a new chapter. So it kind of all starts to make sense and you come up with this eventual breakthrough where you understand, this is what it is and this is what needs to be done. But yeah, integration is a very complex topic. I have at least 4 podcast episodes about it with different experts, different views of it, how to do it, how to take it. So unless you want to make the episode about it, we can change the topic.
Well, I think we definitely had a few episodes, at least 3 or 4 on this podcast talking about integration with different people. So I think I just always like to bring that up because that's something that I see, I hear, I witness people going back and doing ayahuasca 9, 10, 11 times. And I'll ask them, how is the experience? What are you getting out of it? And they'll say, oh, I'm not breaking through. I'm not breaking through. And I'm just really curious to what's the integration experience like? And it's no judgment, but it's are you journaling? Are you maybe working with someone who's an integration specialist or someone who specializes in that? So it's definitely something we can dive really deep into. But I'd like to shift gears a little bit because this podcast, we do talk a lot about addiction and what addiction is and the different definitions of addiction. So I'd really like to talk about ayahuasca as a tool for overcoming addiction, and then also talk a little bit about your story, your history of addiction too.
Yeah, so ayahuasca is a multi-tool, right? So some people, like our motto is connect, heal, grow. Some people come to ayahuasca to heal. Some people come to ayahuasca to grow and just reach next levels of their performance. But we all start with healing, and addiction is actually the reason why a lot of people come to ayahuasca. And even surprisingly so, a lot of people that come for something else get relief from their addiction. For example, I have several stories where people come, maybe they're joining their spouse to go to an ayahuasca retreat, or they just come out of curiosity, and then they go back home and they realize they stopped drinking. Like all of a sudden they just don't feel like drinking anymore. So kind of like trying to understand it, I like the explanation that Gabor Mate gives about the addiction, and it's that don't seek the substance, seek the pain, because it means that somewhere in that process of drinking ayahuasca, they might have addressed that pocket of pain and resolved it, or at least took away some intensity, and all of a sudden, as a side effect, your coping mechanisms, you no longer need it. Sometimes forever, sometimes temporarily, but it's just this because we don't tell them, like, notice something. Is just something that happens, and people reach out to me and say like, oh, you just wanted to let you know I stopped drinking entirely, and I don't know why, I don't know what happened, have it happened before, style thing. But a lot of people come specifically to work with addiction, and it's the same process. I believe that in work with ayahuasca, you're able to focus on that core trauma, on that pain that is causing this balance in your life, and that kind of pushes you to substances or addictive behaviors. as to myself, so I'm in no way like a completed case where, I'm like this guru that like meditates and floats around. So I'm still a human, and sometimes, for example, I'll be okay, but sometimes there's so much stress that is associated with running an ayahuasca retreat and also having three very young kids. I find myself on the phone, like mindlessly scrolling, just like I'm not even looking at stuff. I'm just like anxiously scrolling, and I'm like, then I catch myself, and I was like, what is going on there, right? Like, what am I trying to run away from? Like, there's an emotion, there that feels uncomfortable, and instead of me just sitting down, focusing on that emotion, allowing it to go through me, feeling it, processing it, my habit is to just run away from it because I did it in my teen years, as we spoke with you before the podcast. I used to play computer games because, my father was like physically and emotionally abusive. And I think that if I didn't switch my attention to computer games, I'd be crazy by now. So in a way, there is, it's a mechanism that's perfectly well designed for our species to survive, just like a mechanism of when you have trauma that's too big for you, it just conceals it in the capsule and hides it in your mind because you're unable to process it. So yeah, we shouldn't shoot the messengers. And I think addiction or those addictive behaviors is just a symptom that allows us to then find what is going on in our subconscious that needs some addressing. And this is when medicines like ayahuasca are really helpful because then you can bring stuff from your subconscious, process it, purge it, remove it, and just become saner and saner bit by bit. But yeah, addiction, I guess, I went all over the place. Hope it makes some sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I mean, sometimes I layer questions upon questions, so it's good. You answered the question, and I think addiction is the norm. Addiction is the norm, and addiction is the solution. It's not the problem. And when you can come to that oh, this addiction is a solution to numbing out my emotional pain, it really frees you. And it sounds like to me, and this was similar experience like the computer games. I was absolutely heavily addicted to computer games, and you know, on one side of it, there was this view of it that was negative, right? That was like, oh, this isn't good for me because I'm spending so much time and I'm not socializing in the world. But the flip side of that is there's always a positive to some of these addictions. The positive was that, like for me, it kept me, like you, I know we've talked about it, it kept me away from heavy drugs early on. It kept me from numbing out with serious drugs that could have not only took my life, could have got me around people and situations much earlier on that caused me to act out. So in many ways, it became a positive addiction, being addicted to video games. And that's why I don't like demonizing addictions, because there's a reason. Addiction, if you understand, is the solution to some type of underlying pain. There's some type of repetitive patterns that get relieved through the addiction. Once we can see that and know that, then we can start to uncover that. And I know for you, it was like you said, like you could have been using drugs, or you could have been doing things that, and I know you even mentioned like it helped teach you English, these computer games
Yeah.
and these games that you're playing. So there was a lot of positive sides to the addiction.
I'm getting an analogy as we speak. I think that if the trauma is like a boat sinking, uh, addictions or coping mechanisms is like a life raft, right? You need it at that moment just to like not sink with the boat entirely. But then it needs to be understood that yeah, you can use those behaviors to feel better because it's too much for you, but then you need to like take your life raft somewhere to an island and go back on a dry land. So this is where all the other work comes in. That's the analogy that kind of came through. And I'm curious, what did you play when you were a teenager?
Wow, never been asked that on the show. Yeah, so I think, um, well, in the beginning, I had a Apple computer, so you can only play so many games online. This is in the early '90s, so
Mm-hmm.
I played Myth 2. People think I'm saying Mist. I'm not. I'm saying I'm
Uh-huh.
talking Myth. Myth
Uh-huh.
2 by Bungie, who eventually would create Halo later
Yeah.
later on. And then, but the one that really got me there was two. One was Quake 3, and then
Mm-hmm.
another one was Dark Age of Camelot. That one, just forget it. That game took me into. And you know what's funny about Dark Age of Camelot? And anyone who's played it will understand, because it takes like thousands of hours. It's crazy, but to really start to build your character and fight in the realms. But here's the thing: is about that. I chose to be a mentalist in the game. And in many ways today, and that was as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
in many ways, like, I am a mentalist. So that game showed me, things and powers and magic that I now as an adult know is real. And so it's
Yeah.
really interesting how that game was a metaphor and a parallel to what I do today in many ways.
I
How about
really
yourself?
liked playing strategy games. So I was playing turn-based strategy games. Before that, I mean, I played Warcraft 2 and I played StarCraft and all that stuff. I played a lot of like thousands of hours of game called Civilization.
Mm.
And what I realize now is that as I'm building a retreat, it kind of reminds me of that as well. You have a first settlement, and you build this, and you build a granary, and it's kind of like this. You kind of it's a strategy game, and like running a business is a strategy. So in a way, there's a lot of benefits to it. And yeah, when I was also playing RuneScape, which is an online RPG game.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I learned a lot of my English by trading there with other people. So there are benefits in it. It's just that as long as we can kind of like address the root cause, I think there must be a way to enjoy those things healthily, but like when you're not running away from anything. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot we could dive into with that for sure. And I think it's just something to be aware of. Even if your child is on playing games all the time or is on their phone 10 hours a day, there's obviously the culture, the generation that they're in. Some of it could be, of course, avoiding problems, but sometimes there is positives to that, and to really enter their world. Like if someone would have entered my world at that time, like really entered my world and said to me, why are you playing Dark Age of Camelot so much? Why are you doing this? And really came into my world and understanding, they would have really understood the positivity that I got from it, the positives that I was pulling from it, that was teaching me many things I wouldn't have learned at school. So it's really, really teaching me the understanding of the power of working together and collaborating with others, and understanding the power of holding great power. And that's my character held great power, great spells to cast. And I think that today that's another thing to do. Like even as an entrepreneur, you hold power, especially in the medicine space, which is what I want to talk about next. You're an entrepreneur who owns a retreat center that serves sacred medicine that's very powerful. And so I'd like to hear more about, what is that like, running a retreat center serving medicine? And I'm sure my audience members would be curious to know, like, what is that like? What is this pressure and stresses that you go through, which is very different than starting a plumbing and heating company, or starting even just your own coaching business? What is that like?
So as I like to say, running an ayahuasca retreat is like running a restaurant, a hotel, and a mental health institution, not to say madhouse, because it gets crazy at times. And yeah, we also we have a gym and we have a co-working space, and it's one of my friends who actually works with us. He helps us with marketing that we're kind of also dealing into. Don't get me started on all the content creation and things you need to do to get people interested in coming over. But he says he worked with many different businesses. He says this is the most difficult business model out there. There's so many things. For example, like you have to deal with shamans that are they're kind of like very flexible, and they don't really understand linear time as well as we do. Like they see things differently, but you need everything to be done on time. You need to deal with people that sometimes come with very big mental issues. I've had many times over people saying, I bought a one-way ticket. If this doesn't work, I'm just going to kill myself. And it's like, that's a pretty big pressure to take on. And then also workers and just the amount of people and the emotions. And a lot of times, especially when you're this person holding everything together. And right now I have a chief facilitator for last 2 years. I've had good luck with people that were helping me, but so they carry the brunt of that. But it's like, if somebody has problem with authority and they're trying to heal it, and you're that authority, and even though you're trying to hold the space together so that everyone safely has the best experience possible, they will project it on you, and they will dislike you, and they will try to offend you and make you feel bad. It's like all of that subconscious stuff that's coming up and all those energetic stuff that comes up ends up spilling over and kind of affecting the team. So it's spiritually, it's also very heavy, because if you work with people drinking medicine, there's a lot of release and it all stays here, and we need to then drink medicine to cleanse ourselves. And the other side of it is you're trying to help people overcome mental health issues. Sometimes it's a matter of life and death, honestly. And it's like, how do you charge an amount that is like enough for you to keep the business running and paying, as I told you, like 30 plus workers, while at the same time keeping it affordable so that people can come and like not being prohibitive price wise. So yeah, when I explained it, I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? But because I never set out to start an ayahuasca retreat. It wasn't me just like sitting down like, oh, let me just build this business project. No, it's just, I started from wanting to drink medicine from home, and then synchronicity happening. A guy saying like, "Oh, can I rent your finca?" It's like a country house that I've been renting to do an ayahuasca retreat. I was like, sure. I mean, I don't need to drive for 3 hours to have my medicine. And then he's like, well, you organize it, and I'll just come and give the medicine. It's like, okay, that's cool. And then he tried to rip me off, and I was like, well, I'm going to invite another shaman. And it just kind of happened. So, and I'm telling you, synchronicity after synchronicity after synchronicity. So it's not something that you choose to do. I think a lot of times it's something that finds you. And yeah, it's like, it's a pretty big cross to carry for those that like religious analogies. But there's a lot of positives to it, because this healing container that I've created with my wife, it's also a healing container that is available for myself. And a lot of times when I'm like feeling close to burning out and not feeling my best, I can go back to it and have the healing for myself as well. And it's like there's this perfectly arranged path that does not, as soon as I wear off too much to, let's say, thinking too much about business and money and advertising, it like slaps me back into like spirituality. And it's kind of like this, if you do a graph, it's like the snaking, like me, too much spirituality, too much business, too much spirituality, but like constantly finding that balance, which is extremely difficult, because when you're drinking medicine, you open up to love and all the beauty of the world, but you also open up to negative emotions. So if you have a patient that is projecting on you and they want to hurt you, then it all comes right through, and you have to feel those emotions. Yeah, it's a tough job, but
Yeah.
hopefully you'll come visit someday and you'll see it by yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we talked about that, me coming to Colombia and experiencing your retreat center for sure. And I'm definitely open to that, as I'm on my quest as well. The quest that I can't figure it all out. I'm curious, like people come to your retreat center because of all different types of reasons, maybe relationship troubles, financial troubles, maybe it's addictions, maybe it's past traumas. But what about those who come to your retreat center who are rich? And let's say, when I mean rich, I mean financially, because you can be rich and abundant in other ways. I look out this slider here and I see a jungle and I feel very rich. I feel very wealthy because I can soak in nature and I can feel connected. But let's talk about like the financial, the dollars. Like people, are there people, men and women, that come to your retreat center who have all of the financial freedom, they have all of the money, but they feel unfulfilled? Like what are the percentage of people that come that have the money, they have all that, but So in other words, they grinded and grinded and grinded, and they've got that money. They got millions of dollars, but they're spiritually bankrupt. How common is that?
What is the percentage of people that come really rich but unfulfilled? 100%.
Yeah.
Like I don't recall anyone who's like, I got it. They a lot of times people, to get that money, they sacrifice something else, and this is what they come to heal. So unfortunately, our society prioritizes money, but it doesn't prioritize everything else. Like when I was working in offshore oil and gas, like I was back then I was making like $500 a day tax free, which for Latvia, my country, is like I was earning more in a day than most Latvians earn in a month. So I was rich, but I was completely entirely miserable. As opposed to now, yes, it is a difficult job. It is a difficult thing to do, but there's this fulfillment that comes from knowing that you're helping other people and all the gratitude that comes through. So it's like, I mean, it's not pretty, but it's real, and it's really fulfilling. So I think what is missing for a lot of people that are really rich is that sense of uh, helping other people. But yeah, there's a lot of people that come there very wealthy, and they have their issues to deal with, and they get great results, and a lot of times it shows them how they can use their money to also make the world a better place, and a lot of times it's about being less selfish, but sometimes it's not related as well. Somebody is extremely wealthy because when they were a kid they were really poor, and now they're trying to overcompensate it, and it gives them that ability to realize, it's like, why are they so driven, and now that they have achieved it all, that the pain didn't go away. And it's a really common story that people say, and it's my story as well. It's like, I did everything society told me to do. I studied, I worked, and I achieved everything that I was supposed to achieve. I bought everything I needed to buy, and I was like, where's that happiness that's been promised to me by society? Because it's like, consumerist society tells you, like, if you buy those things, then you're happy, you're rich and you're happy. But it's like, when you realize that it was all a lie, and you're like, okay, what's now? And then it's kind of when you come to spirituality, because I think spirituality is the ultimate frontier, because being born is a spiritual process, dying is a spiritual process, and everything in between is spiritual, whether we want to accept it or not. And it's not easy for me to say, as somebody who was not spiritual before. I realized that maybe I was not correct with a lot of things, but yeah. So a lot of people from different social classes come over here, and somehow the medicine tells them and shows them exactly what they need to see. And if it has to do about money, it shows them that. If it's something else, it shows them that. There's a lot of rich people that are really unhappy, which is really surprising for me. But yeah, ayahuasca really doesn't care about your money. Interestingly enough, a couple times I tried asking ayahuasca for any money related topics, and I was like, what cryptocurrency should I buy? And it was like, just like, I don't want to talk about, like, that's not important. Money will come. It's not important. Like, it's just like, it doesn't care about money. Ayahuasca, I think, understands that as long as you're doing something that is good for you and other people, the money will come. And hopefully so it's going to be the case.
Yeah, thanks for answering that question. It's such an interesting journey, life. And I've also experienced that too, where I blew my life up with drugs and alcohol, and my stories and trauma and the patterns that I had, and then eventually, like, rebuilt my life and did exactly what I was told to do. Go to school, get your undergrad, then get your graduate degree, put yourself in student loan debt, and then also accelerate at your job, be the best you can be at your job, get your 401k. Like, I did all these things. I did all of it, and I bought my house, and I did all these, and I bought a motorcycle, and I had these things. And then I was very unfulfilled. And it wasn't until I met certain individuals that inspired me to see a different way. And then I went that different way. And it was the hardest choice I've ever made, to leave the job, to go and listen to my gut instincts, which had led me to peril. in the past, but it's because I was so programmed with this identity that I had, which was really fed and given to me at a very young age. And then eventually I had to completely walk away from it and then see a different reality, like reprogramming everything and unlearning so many things just as I entered entrepreneurship. And then eventually when I entered the world of medicine, I mean, that really, really got to the root of what I couldn't get to in talk therapy and decade of meditation and these different things I tried, these medicines got to. So I'm curious, why would someone choose to come to Colombia to do ayahuasca versus, trying another medicine, let's say MDMA assisted therapy or 5-MeO DMT, and why would someone choose ayahuasca?
Well, I think first of all, because ayahuasca is a 5,000-year-old tradition, so it's been tried and tested as opposed to kind of newer stuff. Second of all, because it is a tradition, which means that there are shamans who's for generations, like my shaman, his father is a shaman, his dad's dad was a shaman, and it's like lineage, right? So they really, really have the wealth of knowledge based on experience for thousands of years. So that's the main reason. And it's also, I don't want to say anything negative about any other psychedelics. I think it's the unique toolbox that we're creating right now as a society. We need all of them. All of them are unique. Some are better for other things than others. But the beauty of ayahuasca is of how complete it is. It truly possesses that self-guiding spirit or some kind of intelligence that it's hard for me to explain how it's even possible. But it is possible because I've seen it over and over again, for several years now that it really works. That it's a very complete medicine that will give you exactly what you need. If something needs to be removed, it will be removed. If a lesson needs to be learned, it will show you. So that's why. But I think that ayahuasca is not everything. I think there exists this perfect protocol that I've yet to have created of something like maybe one ayahuasca retreat a year and then a couple mushroom ceremonies here and there and a lot of integration with a therapist and journaling and meditation and yoga. It's this, ayahuasca is basically this big door that you open up and then there's this corridor of healing that you go through and then there's another door and you go through it. So ayahuasca is just amazing, but it's not everything. So this is what we're trying to do here at LaWayra, where we give people yoga and meditation, and we show them how to do breathing exercises and tapping, and teaching them shadow work, and like kind of giving them as many tools as possible to go back to the real world and not have to rely on ayahuasca. Let's say there's a bit of a crisis and you need to go through, and you know what to do, but obviously you are inspired by what ayahuasca showed you as well. Yeah, I think there's a lot of my approach to psychedelics is generally I would prefer to work with things that are ancient as well, once again because they're tried and tested, and we know that not only they're safe for us, but they're also safe for generations to come, and they're not going to affect your genetic code and you get like monsters over children because you consume some new untried and untested stuff. So I would say aim for traditional stuff first. Look for stuff that has a tradition, that have a shaman that knows what he's doing. And if you can't, or maybe then, like the medicine model of working with ketamine, for example, I know it works and does great results, but I think it needs to be refined. It's a little too sterile. Like they need to open up to accepting some of the stuff that has already been figured out by traditional plant medicine work. I think then I would be more optimistic about, because set and setting, and also the prices are also a little prohibitive. But anyway, so I think it all has its place, just depending on what you need and when you need it.
Yeah, for sure. That's it's a big discussion, right? Talking about medicines and what they can do and how they can serve. And I think ayahuasca is really unique in its sense of it has this ancestral lineage. It's very interesting how long it's been here. and how it even came to be. And I think that you're right. Like in an ideal world, you would have a menu of options, right? And you could start with this ancestral lineage medicine first, and then you could come to these maybe other medicines if that somehow didn't serve the whole purpose that you intended it to do. Maybe there'd be ketamine assisted therapy later on if that was the case, if the ancestral medicines didn't work, right? Like we could revamp the whole model of pharmaceuticals and healthcare and all these things, which is really called sick care in many ways, right? If we could revamp that whole model, would we even be having this crisis of suicide with veterans and having this epidemic of addiction, fentanyl overdoses, and this mental health crisis post-COVID, right? I mean, there's so much that could be accomplished if we could just study maybe even just ayahuasca and study what that could do with proper integration. Because like you said, once a year, folks, right? And not 74 times in a year. And some people do ayahuasca 30 times a year. I know some people who do that, but what are you doing off the mat? What are you doing in your journaling? What are you doing with your yoga, your meditation, your reading, your habits, right? Like that's really where the big changes have come from me, right? It's what am I doing outside of the medicine work? It's really essential. Like, how am I living? What am I doing? Am I expressing love to myself and others? What have I learned? And how am I being of service? And I think that, that a lot of that stuff is learned. Some of it's in the medicine, most of it's outside of the medicine, because I believe that we are the medicine. we didn't come here to be struggling our whole life, right? It's we are the medicine. We can tap into this innate greatness, but we also have a lot of programming, a lot of unlearning, a lot of things right from when we're born all the way to young adulthood to adulthood that we have to work through. So I really appreciate you sharing that perspective of it. And I'm curious for yourself, what is your highest vision right now? What are your highest intentions? What are you looking to create in your world?
I have a lot of visions and a lot of plans and a lot of things I would want to, I have too many visions, too many ideas. But number one, I'd really like for more people to learn about ayahuasca and understand it better and kind of get rid of that stigma and just realize that see its potential. Number two, I would want to kind of popularize ayahuasca in Colombia specifically to kind of right that wrong and that historical error that Colombia was so overlooked, and hopefully rebranded from this unsafe, cocaine-ridden place to a really safe and extremely beautiful, biologically diverse country with friendly people, amazing things to do and see, and also 5 beautiful ayahuasca traditions that are unique in their own way. And so I would want to do that. Obviously, I wouldn't be able to do it alone, and hopefully get some support from, or maybe like partner up with other retreats. And then I want to. My recent idea is to create an ayahuasca day. So basically, I had this thought once that, like, imagine for anyone of you who are listening who've had ayahuasca experience or even other psychedelic experience, there's this feeling of unity and inspiration and just love and just this amazing feeling. And like after you've done the retreat and you're just so inspired and so this ayahuasca glow, right? Imagine waking up in a world where yesterday everyone had ayahuasca and you're living in a world where everyone is feeling that way. Like, that would be great to fulfill, albeit how difficult or how possible or not. But if we're having Christmas all together one day of the year, why is it not possible for there to be a day where we all have ayahuasca or mushrooms or your psychedelic of choice? So yeah, that's my dream. So I bought a domain called ayahuascaday.com, and I'll try to see if I can maybe collect some signatures or whatever needs to be done. I have no idea how to do it, but that's my dream. So I think if we have that day, then the day after that will be that day of the dreams, where nobody's cutting you off on the road and everyone's friendly and smiling, because we just all of a sudden realize that we're all one and we're all connected, and love is all there is.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really grand, big vision, and I love that, because if we can't hold the space for that, then what is this about being here? And I really love how big that vision is, and I'm excited to personally experience your retreat center and come out there and have that experience. And but just thank you for all the great work you're doing. I love your vision. I love the work you're doing. Let's tell people how they can reach out and learn more about your retreat center.
Yeah, Jesse, thank you for kind words, and also thank you for your work, because obviously we're fighting in the same front, trying to help people to overcome mental health struggles. And I know your work on addiction has been very useful for a lot of people. As for us, the easiest way to find us is go to LaWayra.com, LAWAYRA, or Google Ayahuasca in Colombia. We should be somewhere there on the top, because our website still is Ayahuasca in Colombia. If you're ready to do ayahuasca, just come over, find us on socials as LaWayra. If you're not ready, but you're kind of questioning it, check out our podcast. It's very easy to find, ayahuascapodcast.com. Jesse will be on it shortly. I'm going to interview him as well about his ayahuasca experience. And there you can just learn from experts, all kinds of writers, PhDs, a lot of smart people like Ben Malcolm, spirit pharmacist, that was the connection between me and Jesse. But also just people sharing their stories. Speaking of addiction, I have a podcast with the person that quit smoking weed. I have a podcast with the person that quit drinking, actually 2 podcasts on that, and probably more. It's many now, so I'm kind of forgetting, but check it out, and then maybe you'll be ready to come. And but yeah, there's a lot of tools now. We're living in such a time where there's so many issues, but at the same time we have so many great tools. My father is an alcoholic, for example. My father's father was an alcoholic, and I'm not alcoholic, but I'm also realizing that maybe when I got depressed, if there was no ayahuasca for me, maybe I would have been an alcoholic as well. So we have a unique set of challenges. We also have a unique set of tools right now, and podcasts like Jesse's as well. It's one of them. Like, how amazing it is to be in a community of people that want to heal together. So thank you, Jesse, and thank you for everyone who was listening.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. It's a great inspiration. You're breaking that lineage of alcoholism. It starts with you. And thank you so much, Sam. I can't wait to share this episode out. I can't wait for people to come and be educated through your podcast and just to get to know this sacred medicine even more. So thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thanks for watching today's episode. Your support means the world to me. So thank you for liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel and to this podcast. We've got amazing content and amazing interviews coming out soon. So thanks again. Enjoy your day. Sending love and blessings to you all.